Good evening and welcome to the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for Tuesday, October 10th, 2017. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am now calling the October 2017 Village of Ossining Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing to order. I ask that you please turn off your cell phones. For those in the audience, please do not engage in activities that may distract the board or the applicants or their respective representatives. Please do not engage in loud or extended conversations during the proceedings. Any conversation by audience members should be conducted outside the room. At the end of the applicant's presentation, the public will be given an opportunity to speak on relevant issues involving the application. So you will be asked to take a pledge. Do you promise to tell the truth under penalty of perjury, because this is a quasi-judicial hearing? And we're going to start tonight. We're going to take one item out of order. We are expecting our other two members to be here any second. So we're going to take, let's take Iroquois. So we'll take, okay, ZBA 20-17, 19 Iroquois Road. Applicant has worked to submit updated zoning spread worksheet so the board can vote in this meeting on a existing screen and porch that has obviously been there for quite a while. I want to make it clear to you that this zoning board does go around and look at the properties prior to the meeting. So they turned in their sheets, which we got in our packet. And everything is good, Joe? Joe, building Joe?
Yep.
Okay, and so.
We need 3 variances.
And this will clean up the whole property, right? It's not, because originally it was just the screen porch, right?
Just the front yard variance, and you had closed the public hearing last time when they presented their evidence. They just had to make sure that their calculations on the zoning worksheet were appropriate.
Right. Is there anybody here that's here to talk about 19 Iroquois? It's a very upfront one. It's one of ours that, in order, I believe the family that said they might sell the house.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Let's start at the top. ZBA 2116, Croton Avenue. Is there anyone here from Croton Avenue? I don't believe there is going to be anyone here from Croton Avenue. Okay, the planning board is lead agency on this project. We're waiting for the SECR review, and the zoning board made it quite clear last month that we would not present until we saw the SECR review. So we will see them soon, I'm sure. So we're waiting. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes and see if Let's proceed with ZBA 19-17. This is 63 South Highland Avenue. Applicant is seeking to construct 2 parking spots in their front yard.
I assume you'd like me to speak over that?
Please, sir.
Good evening, Stephen Bassini, architect for the applicant. John Carbone, who's present this evening. We were here last month. Should I wait? What's it?
Sorry, everybody.
It's okay.
I was here last month to
Perfect
present this application for variances. The initial variance was for the proposed project, which was to finish the basement in an existing 2.5-story house to create an additional residential unit, dwelling unit, which would require an additional 2 parking spaces by the code. Currently, as you see in the site plan, there's 2 parking spaces in the back, 1 in the frame garage and 1 next to it. The proposal is to put 2 parking spaces in the front yard. That in itself requires a variance, but as through research of the site, with the planning department, obviously, and with the survey, there's multiple variances that need to be granted on the site. They're all predating the zoning. There's a rear yard variance, a side yard variance, a width variance, area variance, coverage variance, and impervious coverage area variance. Again, those are all predating the zoning. Not to say that the concentration is on this, but that's really why we're here. The proposal, again, is to put 2 parking spaces there. There's a hillside here, which the intention is to essentially set the parking spaces into the hillside with a retaining wall in here. The parking spaces would be accessed by pulling into the driveway and pulling in there. They would not be accessed directly off of South Highland into those parking spaces. The wall here would be about 4.5 feet at its highest in the corner, which essentially would conceal the majority of a car as you're driving by South Highland. It wouldn't be exposed, fully exposed. There was question as far as, well, I brought forth proof of precedence, so to speak, of certain of the aspects of this project. At the last meeting, and I presented photographs and a chart to the board, and I know that at the time they didn't have time to review it. Assuming you've reviewed it to now, I just want to touch on it quickly and say that certain of the items we need to get a conditional permit from the planning board, I understand, for the basement apartment, and we also need to get an excavation and a permit, a variance for the front for parking. 3 categories I broke down as I went through the PO district along South Highland. There's a handful of homes there, as you saw in the attachments. 3 categories that I investigated through look of the GIS maps and some of the tax records. One was which units have basement apartments. The other was which has multifamily, approved multifamily use. And the others were which units along that PO district have parking in the front currently. Whether or not they're permitted to have parking in the front, I don't know, but by photographic evidence, it's obvious that there's parking spaces and driveways in the front of the lot. First, because this is why we're here, is the parking. This is the map of the PO district. The applicant's property is 63 right here. On the opposite side of the street, every one of these houses, 46 through 56, 6 lots have parking in the front. I presented photographs last time. I know that's on record showing the cars. I mean, there's not even a question. Again, I don't know if they're permitted, but they currently exist. 2 spaces down here, 90 and 92, and then 97 is an apartment building. Those all have parking in the front as well. The difference, what I was saying was, some people brought up that the parking here is well, some of these pictures are not great. My printer didn't work too well today, but they're at a different level because the opposite side of South Highland is flush with the grade and then slopes down in the backyard, as opposed to the applicant's property slopes up from South Highland away. These cars are highly visible because they are flush with the level with the South Highland. Again, to point out that this will be, the majority of it, about 3/4 of the car will be concealed by the wall. Other areas of precedence, and not necessarily maybe an issue for this board, but I do understand it all is connected, is multifamily, since we are requesting that as a conditional permit. These are all the units on South Highland and PO District that are currently multifamily. There's almost half of them along there. The other ones are 2 families. there's a funeral home, and there's the lodge over there, but there's a great portion of them that are multifamily, specifically actually right on the same side of the street here, and the same side of the street as the applicant. Right next door to 63 is 65, and that is a legal-free family, a multifamily apartment, or building rather. The other thing is, as far as basement apartments, which I know again falls under the purview of the planning board, but it's important to locate that there are units that are legally there, and I can't attest to which units along that route have illegal apartments, but I do know that there are multiple building permits that have been approved for finished basements, and those are on the tax records. I can't say what they're using them for now, and I'm not going to cast aspersions, but I have a feeling some of them are apartments. Either way, these are the legal basement apartments there. One is at 79, which is 4 houses away from 63. There was some question also, one of the neighbors at the planning board meeting showed up and had requested, had suggested that along that area of South Highland, the lawns are picturesque and they're going up the hill, and you would hate to see that area disturbed by parking, but I brought also pictures the last time to show that this property here at the corner, this is 63 here, this property 69 is on a corner of Maurice and South Highland. It's completely covered. The front yard is a small tan code retaining wall with a fence on top of it. I'm feeding back, I'm sorry, I apologize. Around the entire front of the yard, and then going up the corner as well, is all a retaining wall with a fence on top of it, so that front yard is concealed. And then as you get, and then as you go a few houses up, we know what happens as we go up South Highland up towards the church. There's that the pre-engineered stone wall that is there that is, goes up to 12 feet or so, I believe in some places, but that begins only 2 lots past my client's house. So as far as picturesque lawns, there are a few of them there. I wouldn't say it encapsulates the feeling of South Highland necessarily. And what we're trying, I don't know if I can improve that.
Can you move that? Can you move that microphone
Someone else's
off or
maybe?
something? Turn it off or something.
It wasn't me.
It's there. You're probably too close.
Thanks. I would say that because what we're doing, we're making an attempt to really try and maintain the look as well, like keeping the lawn there and keeping the car concealed. Other than that, I don't know if the board had any questions about the documents that provided the last time, or any follow-up questions.
Well, even looking at your diagram there, it doesn't appear that there's very much front lawn left.
Well, actually, that is the property line. The grass actually goes out past the property line to South Highland.
Because I was looking at that property again today,
Mhm.
and it doesn't seem to be that much area, that 2 parking spots.
But you're saying there's not much area for the
Well,
parking
you
spots?
led us to believe that you wouldn't even see the cars because the hill would, it would be, you would see the hill and then the cars would be tucked in there. And it's not that big of a space.
It's tucked up, if you see where it is, I know what you're saying. It is tucked up as close to the porch as we can possibly get it without disturbing the existing foundation. And there's a good 7 or 8 feet of grass going towards the sidewalk. So this hill starts very drastically, it goes up. In fact, the stairs, you can see it right here. Those stairs is where the hill starts to slope up. And the top of the slope is even with the stairs. So if you see the stairs here, running line across there, we're pretty high up to the top of that slope. I know what you're saying, but the hill starts very quickly.
And there's no part of this that's on village property
There's no part of this on village property now.
or right of way?
Correct. And there was one last thing, if I may point out, nobody asked for your questions, but I just want to make a point because someone had talked about off-street parking. In the quote in the code, I'm going to read you something, and I know there's a larger portion of the code. This is an excerpt. I'm trying not to take it out of context, but it says that the building inspector, if the building inspector finds that due to unique conditions, compliance with this limitation of parking specifically in the front yard will cause practical difficulties and increase street parking, then they have the ability to make modifications or to approve certain things. I know obviously we're here for that purpose, but I think that overburdening off-street parking is pointed out in the code as something that you're trying to avoid. And Lincoln Place, which would be the closest one, this whole area here is all apartment buildings. And in the evening and after work, that Lincoln Place is filled up. So this would help to prevent, rather, further burdening of the off-street parking.
Does anybody have any questions? Is there anybody here that would like to speak on 63 South Highland Avenue? Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
We went ahead and spoke about, while we were waiting, spoke about 19 Iroquois, because 19 Iroquois was just for the cleanup for zoning sheets, and she did a great job on it. Okay? Okay, ZBA 2117, 51 Callum.
Good evening, Board. My name is Daniel Diaz. I'm representing Mario Alvarez. He is the owner, he was the owner of the property at 51 Collins. He purchased this property about a year ago with an existing deck that is currently 5.8 feet from the side property line. When he purchased the property, the deck was there. All the owner did was change the railings, change the decking, and did nothing to the actual structure, or did nothing actually to the point of making it any bigger or any smaller, just left it the same way as it was. Tonight we're requesting a 6.2 feet variance from the required 12-foot, 12-foot variance on the side yard. Currently, the house is 5.3 feet from that side yard setback. The deck would be 6.8, so it's about 6 inches further away from the side yard setback. It's, I guess it's all that I can say. It was not his intention to do this. He purchased the property like that. And since he finished the work and finished all the alterations he did with permits, the house has been sold. There is currently a new owner in the house. And he is now trying to get this accomplished and the variance so he can complete the sale of the property.
So, basically,
Want to
they
speak
did.
in the mic?
Oh, sorry.
Now the mic won't give you a feedback, it's going to be further away.
Okay, so, no, they did take out permits, they did remodel this property, but they needed a predate letter to sell it because there was no certificate of occupancy on record in the original construction of the house. And during that process is when it was determined that the deck was never permitted to begin with. So since it wasn't on record to clear the sale, they had to go through the process of legalization, which part of that is to get a variance because the original deck never had a permit or never came to the zoning board for a variance to begin with.
You've been to the property?
Yes.
Are there other variances that are needed?
There's probably variances needed to clean up the property. It's an odd-shaped lot, so.
Not you, it's an enormous house, I'm not sure.
Right. I mean, there's really no rear yard to the property. But in this particular case, the building department sent it here because they had to legalize the deck. It was constructed probably by a previous owner, but there was no permits on record.
Well, did you have a survey too?
There's a certain here.
Because we do, someone that couldn't be here, or a neighbor that couldn't be here said that they were,
You want the survey?
yeah, but they said that they were, we object to the variance request because we're presently working on the title company in regards to the property.
I know the house, from what I understand, was, there was an agreement between the owner that's trying to legalize this and now the current owner is the new owner. So they made some type of an agreement that the only thing that they had to follow through was to get the variance and legalize the deck. least that was what was brought to my attention.
So we don't know if he needs more variances? Because when you look at the plan, it's very close to the property line.
It is what it's looking.
You know, more than
Maybe fill out the chart where it will be.
Should we do?
Yeah, I mean, from the worksheet that was filled out, it would appear that they would need more variances, but they were existing. It's the existing house that required variances.
See, because doing one variance and then you're leaving the rest doesn't solve the problem. So what, you know, then it still is illegal. So you've got to do all the variances together.
Yeah, the worksheet needs to be completed and filled
Yeah,
out
this-
for all the
this-
variances.
And I think that
We
they
can't
need
vote
to
on
share
this
the
tonight.
survey with
I
your
wouldn't
neighbors.
vote on it. Not until we know what other
Right.
variances are required, I'm sorry. Very simple.
We're referring to the legally non-conforming house as it is, the existing house.
Correct, this house is,
This house just has
if
variance.
you look at this, it's way too close to the property line.
Correct.
So therefore, legalizing this still makes it an illegal property.
Yeah.
So
Correct.
therefore, what sense would there be to legalize that and leave all this, and then what are you gonna do, come back again?
No.
It's gotta be done, I think, at once. I don't know how anybody else feels. What do you think?
Well, generally, when you apply for one variance to do something like legalize a deck, you would, so that you don't have to come back. I don't know what kind of financing is involved with that kind of thing. But many times at closing, and we've had that here where, you know, there's not a permit and then other variances are required to conform with the zoning code and people have to come back. It's just, we've always tried to clear up the variances.
Very similar to that
One-
other case we talked about where she wanted to legalize her sun porch, but she came back with all her variances that she needed to get done. So, we can talk about that after.
So the house, if I understand correctly, did not have a building permit to begin with.
Yeah, I believe the house was built before they issued certificate of occupancies.
Okay, so so this house would be considered a legal, non-conforming structure,
That's the lawyer has to answer that.
because it was built without codes, because there were no codes back then, so
But
it's
the
legally
problem that people run
non-conforming.
into is when there's a title search on the property, they go through and they see that it doesn't conform to the, whether
Current.
you consider it pre-existing, non-conforming use or not. They say it doesn't conform, and people have to come back here anyway. So what we try and do is clear up all of the non-conformities to a property so that your seller and purchaser don't have an issue.
Understand? Understand.
So basically, they should just complete the zoning worksheet, and even if some of the conditions are existing, just put them in there and they'll read the variances to clean up the property.
Yeah. That's basically what it is, with the existing.
Right.
Then the property is good going forward for the
Right.
next owner or whoever.
Correct.
Because we can't go back to the CO and look at it.
That's, sounds good.
Okay, so why don't we have you come back, we'll put them on the agenda for next month, and then they can come back, and by then, we would hope that
They'll know what other.
anybody that has complaints about it, you address that with those, you know, with those folks by the survey and, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
CBA 2217, Victoria Home, North Malcolm. As you can see, we've changed the way we do this now, so you come up here.
Do you want the, or should be on the, it's just you want.
Good evening, David Venditti, attorney for Victoria Home. I'm here with Joe Rena from Site Design and Mara Tesoro from Perkins Eastman. And I want to start off by pointing out, I want to say, first of all, Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Wanted to let you know there's a typo in both the agenda, and I think it's because there's a typo in the cover letter on the submission that mentions a current 48-room facility. It's actually currently a 49-room facility. So I just thought I would clear that up. As you probably know from when we were here previously, getting extensions of the variances that were issued in connection with the prior approval for the 120-bed facility, New York State then only approved a 90-bed facility. Because of that, we're back in front of the planning board to amend our site plan to bring it down to a 90-bed facility, which is going to go from formerly the two buildings to now one building. And at the same time, while we still require variances, we previously had, I believe, some 26 odd variances approved in 12 different categories, and now we need, it's down to 8 variances in 6 different categories, I believe, due to the fact that now there's only one building, smaller, it's been repositioned. I think that all of the variances, and we'll go through them if you're ready to point them out, Mario, is that on the building height, I'm sorry, the building setback from the front yard requiring 25 feet, 75 feet, we are proposing, I didn't bring my reading glasses, 28 feet.
Somebody might jump in.
Which previously was 26 feet, so we're down, we need a 47-foot variance instead of the 49-foot variance that we needed before. With respect to parking, we're at the same, because we're going to be starting where the existing parking is, which was 10 feet from the roadway or from the property line. So on the 75 feet, it's the same variance of 65 feet requested. With respect to the stories, while we're still at the 4 stories based upon the height, we have a significant reduction in height. I believe that we're down from what was previously 53 or 54 at its max, down to 48.5 feet. So that would be a 13.5 foot variance, 1.5 stories, which, while the height is less, it still calculates out to the same number of stories, based upon the one side of the building. Wall setbacks that need to be 75 feet from the front yard. We're at 3 feet and 6 feet, which requires a 72 and a 69-foot variance. Before, we needed 73-foot variances for each of them. And on a wall height of 3 feet, we have 10 feet and 6 feet, which is a 7-foot and a 3-foot variance. Again, it's down from what was previously requested before when we had our approvals. And maybe, Mary, if you want to run through anything else on here, or any questions that you may have. I'm sorry, Joe. Mario, is there anything you wanted to add? Joe, anything you wanted to add on some of this?
Just so you're aware, the plans that were submitted with the original submission, this has, up to last week, we've been modifying this plan. The plan you have shows somehow I lost it. The plan that you have had the building further up the hill, and we moved it about 30 feet
Yeah, 45.
further to the west. So you should be aware that those and the zoning worksheets that you have are at this point obsolete, and you'll be getting new ones. So,
They're completed after the submission date.
would you like to see the architecture? Are you interested in seeing the
Sure.
architecture?
Even though we're not architecture people. So are we ready to move forward then? After the variances in the planning board and stuff, or?
Well, we need to go back to the planning board. We're still with the planning board to complete our process.
Joe, were the recent changes that you made, were those to the planning board or the EAC that you heard before, or?
The recent.
Let me just, please speak into the thing. It says, ask your question again. Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Joe, were the recent changes to the plan due to the comments from the planning board last month and from the EAC earlier this month?
Correct. We've already presented to the planning board. They had some recommendations. They wanted us to address some concerns regarding the sequence of construction and how it's going to work in conjunction with keeping the existing facility in operation. So some of the adjustments we've made are reflect how we're going to approach the construction. And a portion of the existing building is going to have to come down, but the main support facilities and all the residence rooms will remain while the new building is going up.
So not only be displaced,
Yeah, yeah.
structures that.
Right. And proper protection will be put in place for the residents, so they're not disturbed.
But whenever we have received comments from the planning board, the environmental board, or this board, we've done our best to wherever possible accommodate them, and it, has resulted in, I think, a little bit of a kinder and gentler project.
And we're meeting with the planning board again next 2 weeks on this.
Good. Is there anyone here that, to speak on Victoria House? Yes, sir.
Yeah,
You need to come up here.
Do I need to come up?
Yes.
Okay.
You can pass this mic down so you don't have, but just,
Hi, my name is Ray O'Hanlon, and I live near the Victoria Home on Independence Place. And I will say that Victoria Home has always been a good neighbour. One of my questions has been answered. I was curious about a rendering of the architecture. I'm looking at it now, and it looks pretty good to me. I was curious, though, with regards to the demolition of the current structure. Is the entire current Victoria Home going to be replaced, or will any part of it be retained?
No, eventually it will all be removed. However, some of the original features.
Right, the interior, some of the original interior features will be restored and used in public spaces for the residents. We're thinking of some of the paneling and some of the fire mantles will be reused in those locations. The exterior of the building, while it's the massing is fine, Queen Anne, Victorian, there is not, with a lot of Victorians, maintenance is done by removal, and there isn't that much in the way of Queen Anne detailing on the outside of the building that we can use. Though we are trying to, with the covered walkway, which acts as a porch, a wraparound porch, and the octagon object in front, we're trying to mimic the Victorian style. And the scale of the building is smaller than what was approved in 2015.
And just so you know, it was in consultation with the Historical Society, since the footprint necessarily wouldn't allow for the maintenance of the existing facility. We did reach an agreement where we would use as much of the architectural detail as possible, and what we could not use, we were going to offer for donation to the Historical Society.
I see. Where am I standing when I'm looking at that now? Am I on the west side?
You are standing on Malcolm, probably in front of the existing parking lot.
Okay.
Malcolm and Matilda, probably about 40 feet away from the corner.
And the height of the proposed new building it's not appreciably higher, you were talking about earlier on, than the current structure? It has a pitched roof, I see. I think part of the current structure has a flat roof.
Right.
At the back, yeah.
Right. It's where most of the building, as you get down the hill, it gets taller, but most of the building is 3 stories. So and with the pitched roof, it's approximately 40 foot tall.
But the variances are measured from the maximum point.
Right.
It doesn't mean that it'll all be 4 stories. It just means that you see when the top parking feet drops off, in that basement area, that ends up being considered another story.
Okay. And what do you envisage in terms of it, assuming everything goes smoothly, what are you talking about in terms of completion of the project?
I think this project, correct me, it's cut down from what was originally estimated at 2 years to about 1.5 years. Is that more or less it?
It was, I think, 3 to a year and a half.
3 to 1.5 years. So there'll be less disruption for the neighbor as well.
so since you have your approvals for the number of beds now, that would start quickly?
Yes, we not only have approvals, but we have a time limit by which to have shovel in the ground and a completion done.
Will Queen Victoria's portrait hang in the
Oh, yes.
foyer still?
Oh, yes.
And
And there'll still be cookies.
as an Irishman, I grin and bear it. That's what I can say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for asking those questions, because those were my questions too, but I didn't, it was not necessarily appropriate, for a zoning question.
I just have two questions. One is, the first time when you had where it was 2 buildings, you gave us very much like a layout of the property showing in red all the variance requirements. Can you give us an update of that?
Yes, sir. Yes, we'll
Yes.
we'll update that.
Because I was holding on to that, knowing that at that time I believe you had like somewhere around 28 variances,
It was 26 or
something like that.
It
That's-
should be 8 now.
Okay.
There were no loading dock variances, with 4 of those.
Right, so if you just give me an updated one, that would be what that helps.
Absolutely.
The other question I have is, and I guess it's not specifically for this board, but one of the concerns is knowing that you're gonna have the residents still there during the construction, and you have one side of that property that we always have to deal with that has a huge drop off, which is obviously not accessible for fire access. Based on only the access to the building being to the front, I guess some of my concerns would be is, are you, during the construction, are you going to be able to maintain fire safety for the residents in the building?
We have to show that to, not only to the local municipality, but to the state as well. And my understanding is, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by no access, because I think there's still, you met with, there's still 360-degree access.
The current main driveway that goes right to the front door, that's gonna remain during construction.
Well, I mean, obviously during construction, remember, you're using the site for demolition, staging of materials, so that to maintain that
And we're trying,
accessibility is gonna be a little challenging, but.
right, we're trying to do that all from the downhill approach and from the rear approach from the Matilda access point.
I mean, and then the other thing would be, is obviously if demolition is obviously a component of this, because there's gonna be residents there. When you give us the information, we're going to get an update on whether or not materials in there have asbestos laden. So again, if that comes out positive to some of these materials, again, that may be, it's a challenge which you're gonna have to give to us to show how you're gonna secure that to residents that are there while it's
Of
after.
course.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
So our next step is we're now back in front of the planning board.
Well, and you have to, and you've actually told us that you need to update your variance requests anyway
Yes.
from
Yes.
the times you met with the
Correct.
planning board and the EAC. Okay, so we'll hold off until that, but,
Fortunately, they're being updated downwards.
right, fortunate for us, yeah.
They're not-
Unfortunate, well,
Doesn't happen much.
no, usually goes the other way. Okay. All right.
Very good.
Is there anyone else that's here to speak on Victoria Home? I believe it's all Victoria Home?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
Thank
See
you.
next month.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you all.
But this is for the world.
Did you get a good shot of it?
Okay. All right, do I have a motion to close? Thank you, gentle people. Do I have a motion to close the public hearings for
Motion to
tonight?
close. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, thank you. And now we'll discuss the different properties. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Croton Avenue, of course, is adjourned until Secret. 63 South Highland Avenue, this is the one with the 2 parking spots in the front, and they have updated their variance request to be other variances that they need on the property too.
Well, this variance for the parking request is very similar to the one we passed a few years ago on Linden Avenue, where they dug into the, right into the hill, you know, and provided parking and, you know, garage.
Well, there
I mean, it's
is,
the same type of thing. This is a little more active, the street, you know what I mean?
it's more active, but there's a long driveway too.
Yeah.
It's not their only access to parking.
No, I know.
Yeah, that would be.
But it seems that they want the additional parking in a way because they want to put another apartment.
Right.
So I mean, I think that what drives it. It may or may not be true, but it seems
Well,
logical.
that's what they're.
Yeah. So, it's like that song where you have mixed emotions.
Mhm.
And I hate, I'm not basically generally in favor of apartments in basements. I mean, I'm just not, I think it's getting to be too common a thing where everybody's trying to, it's a tough time, they're trying to add to their income. I don't blame anybody for that. But do we, as a village, want to go along this path, and how far along the path do we want to go?
Just a legal note on that, it is a conditional use, a multifamily apartment is a conditional use in that district. So, in essence, it's a permissible use, but to which the planning board could attach conditions. So they're allowed to have it. It's sort of the tail wagging the dog, obviously. They need the parking in order to be able to have the apartment, but the apartment itself is a conditional use, which they can have. And I think you pointed out other instances in which there are basement apartments in that area.
Oh, yeah, sure. So what you basically said, if the parking isn't approved, you can't have the apartment.
Or they might have to come back before you and ask for a variance to
Have the apartment
to
without
have an
parking.
apartment with
Then
no.
they have the parking
Right,
variance too.
right.
Well, it looked like there's a lot of parking in the back when we went by. Do we know how many spots there is now and how many they're trying to get?
I think you said 2 in a framed garage, and 2 sort of on the side there.
There was a lot more cars parked in there.
Yeah.
Or, than they would like. Yeah.
Right.
It was 4.
And again, not that this has that much to do with this board, but there's different building codes that are gonna be required to put an apartment there. Just because it's a conditional use of a place, if you look at the apartment, the windows have to be they're under a
How about
porch.
the access, et cetera?
Yeah.
Ventilation, light,
Escape routes,
access, whatever, if there's a certain fire, they'll have to adhere to all of the state
Right.
codes, obviously.
Right, so it's not just because you get parking spots, you get an apartment in there.
That's-
Is the apartment already in place?
Have you seen it, Jeff?
I believe it's a proposal to make it into a 3-family. And part of that is to be able to have a grant to the constructor, they need the parking.
The house is beautiful, it's an old house, and it has this beautiful wraparound porch. But I'm not sure there's any windows anywhere besides underneath that wraparound porch, so.
I would assume that when the application comes in to construct it, they'll have to accommodate all of that, because it's gonna need to have the proper size windows, the bedrooms and so forth. I haven't, gotten the whole scope of that yet. I guess they're on the stage right now getting approved.
And again, that's a planning board and a building department issue, it's not a zoning issue, but it's just as a resident of the community and as, someone that in many other districts, we do not even allow basement apartments, so.
Are we putting the horse before the cart here? In the sense of talking about the parking variance not knowing exactly what the basement is and how it should be configured and if it's possible and what it needs and all the other things that go with it. It would make sense to me to put this whole thing together as a package of some type or know where we're headed, because in my mind, I don't want to vote for positively, thinking that maybe this other part is not where it should be.
They did go before the planning board, at the planning board's September meeting. They did give an indication or a presentation that they wanted to do this basement apartment. I don't recall if there were plans shown at the time, quite honestly, but I believe that the planning board was of the opinion that they didn't disfavor the application. They haven't made up their minds yet as to what conditions might be imposed, but I think they understand that it's something that's permitted in that district. And as the gentleman said, in certain districts we don't allow basement apartments.
Exactly.
It's prohibited. And we have taken the position that this board doesn't have the authority to override that prohibition. It was done by the Board of Trustees because they had a certain philosophical, in certain districts, a certain philosophical concept. So I think the planning board looks at it and says it's something that can be done in that district. What's holding
No,
up,
I have no problem with that.
what's holding it up is they do need the parking.
Yeah, but, I mean, should they not go and present their plans to the building department and make sure that they have the height requirements, make sure they have access?
Make sure everything's proper.
Make sure it can be an apartment just because it's conditional that you can do one there. And then come to us and say, listen, we can do everything that we want to do down there. It does seem like it's,
Well, it is sort of a tricky thing in a situation like this, because before the planning board can act, they need the variance. And so then it would go back to the planning board to grant, if they so desire, to grant the conditional use. Then it would come to the building department. They would have to look at the plans that had been filed and okayed by the planning board to make sure that those complied with all the different codes and those kinds of things. So it's
seems slightly backward.
In other words, if the planning board would approve it, we could have some faith that they made sure everything was legal in terms of height and access and windows and all that.
Well, I suspect what the planning board would end up doing, should they grant the application, is the conditions would be that they comply with all the state and local regulations, including fire, access, ventilation, those kinds of things. And then it would be up to the building department to make sure that they comply with those things.
So the biggest problem is a lot of applicants say they don't want to have an architect submit all the plans, get everything together to the building department, and then come in front of the board and the board denies them. Because then there's a cost to the applicant to say, paid for all of this to be submitted to the building department. And first step is to get approved by the boards. So in a lot of cases, they only present what you're going to see before I see anything.
So in other words, the planning board says it's okay, they draw the plans, they submit them to you, and you make sure they're legal.
Right. In the end, you can approve, the planning board can approve, the conditional use, you can approve the variance, but if they submit to something that doesn't meet the state requirements, they're not gonna get it.
So if they met all the state requirements, then you have no problem.
Right.
Yep.
So can we say that we will issue the variances in condition to the fact that the planning board will approve then the apartment,
In the building department.
the building department and everything like that, and with that condition, I mean.
Yes, I think you could issue a conditional variance conditioned upon the planning board granting the conditional use permit, yes.
Because it looks like it gotta go back and forth,
And that's always,
like a tennis match.
it's a chicken and the egg kind of
Yeah,
thing.
so-
And that's why I say it's sort of the tail wagging the dog sometimes. They have to come here to get their variance for
Right.
parking, so that they can get the apartment.
Right.
So yes, the answer to your question is you have the authority to issue a conditional variance based on the planning board granting a conditional use permit for the apartment.
And then the building department.
Well, that's always what, they'll file something with the planning department, I'm sorry, the planning board, and Joe will have some input, I'm sure, into that as to whether, you know, there's enough space, enough square footage, those kinds of things that are in our code, and also, you know, whether it meets the state code, whether it's be a sprinkler or something along those lines. And Joe would be the one to enforce it. If they didn't do that, he would not issue the CFO for the basement apartment.
What do you think?
I would move to go along with that.
Conditional use?
So conditional variances
Yeah,
conditioned
you did.
upon the conditional use permit being issued by the planning board.
Who would actually see what the insides of the apartments must look like? Right.
Can the planning board, based on the conditional use, to issue a request, we'd like to see the layout to make sure it's the proper number of bedrooms?
I don't see why they couldn't. I mean, there has to be, you have to present something to the planning board. I would
Right.
assume it would be plans as to what the apartment would look like.
Can we state that in the resolution?
Absolutely.
And knowing that they have a conditional variance at this point, to Joe's point earlier, they've gotten past this hurdle, so if they have to invest a little bit more to get the plan together
Right.
to make the planning board happy, they've at least gotten beyond this point.
That's the idea, that, you know, just.
And if you were to deny it, it wouldn't make a financial sense for him to go and obviously get
Exactly.
and so oftentimes we see on smaller projects like that, they'll make sure they get their variances first so they can go on to the next step. That's a good point.
So could we also state in there that they should include, you know, they still have to get other variances because the property must have other variances that are,
I don't know the answer.
and I don't know what the answer is either, but on that particular property.
Do we have a survey of the property, complete survey, which we can measure?
The house was sold not too long ago, like a few years ago or something.
Yeah.
There's this one.
The other variances are listed on the zoning table, sorry. There's a list of all variances on the zoning table in the site plan.
Okay.
I can see it here, okay. I just can't see the numbers, but it looks.
There it is.
I think all but the front door parking, I think that was the testimony last time, all but the
Right.
last one on the list.
I remember there was
Basically
more.
Non-conforming,
Okay.
pre-existing non-conforming.
Do you want me to read what they are, since I think that bigger for you?
No, it's okay, as long as, if
They-
they're
they spelled
okay,
it
and
out
it's
very
just that
clearly.
one, it's okay.
Yeah.
There's 7 of them.
Okay.
Aside from.
Yeah, that seems to me a logical way to approach it.
What do you think, Greg?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so we'll, going to issue them a conditional variance on the planning board, which will see what we want to put in, that they must see that the apartment, so that Joe can look at it, or I should say the building inspector can look at it,
So the building inspector can approve the plans.
Right. for what the building's gonna look like.
Yeah. Okay.
So do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Does that include all the other variances or just that?
Yeah, all the other.
Can I ask for clarification? Does that mean that if, say, the planning board does not approve it,
And
that
that's not,
all of the other variances are not approved either? If they're under the same stipulation, the predated, I'm trying to look through
Right.
the site as well, obviously.
Right.
That's true?
Well, you could do variances to correct the pre-existing non-conforming,
Right.
the substandard issues, side yard, that type of thing. That would not necessarily have to be
If it comes back that you're not approved, let's say,
From the planning,
from
right?
the planning board, just do what we do, you saw it already here tonight once. Issue us a new zoning spreadsheet without the parking spots on it, to clear up all the other variances, and we can vote on that
Yeah.
again. Yeah. Okay?
Exactly.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Okay.
51 Callum.
No
No,
problem.
it was 19 Arrow.
Oh, I'm sorry. 19 Iroquois, how could we, yeah. 19 Iroquois, they were here last month. We told them just to clean up their spreadsheet, their worksheet, and they did. So do I have a vote positive for the 19
Yeah, that's
Iroquois?
okay.
That's the screened-in porch, right?
Yeah,
Screened-in porch?
motion to approve.
Second?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Who was the first and second item?
George and Greg?
And, we go back to the vote prior to that. Who was that?
George and Greg?
Trying to be
That's
consistent.
really, that works, I just, sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
I'll wear a tie next time.
Yeah, yeah, you won't see.
In 51 Calhoun, they have to come back again.
51 Callum has to come back again, and I think I would like everyone to take a ride by that property and see
And you want them to
the lot
revise
versus the
zoning?
house. The house is the lot.
You know,
Well, I know that. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
I never
when we,
saw a lot
we had to
like that.
search the property where we got to this point,
Yeah.
because they asked for a predate. And there was a lot of additions put on the house over the
Yeah,
years,
you
but they
can tell.
received, and they received C of O's. They just kept building it.
Without
garage.
COs?
They got C
Oh,
of O's.
they
The only
did.
one that was never on record was the deck,
And probably the original house,
in the original house, right?
because all of us don't have
Right,
original
but you can
COs.
see when you see that property, as you can see, it looks like the garage and another
Yeah,
section.
We drove around and drove
What,
around.
what do you think? If we should try and get all those variances together?
Clearly, because I
Yes.
I
Doesn't
just
that make
can't
more
imagine
sense?
that they wouldn't have a problem. I mean, and again, we've seen this before on other
And then they'll have a
properties.
problem going forward if they try and
Right.
sell it again.
And the worst thing is, you know, when they find out the week before the closing, that, you know, somebody has come up and said
Well,
that.
like the guy found out about the deck.
Yeah.
I think this has to be adjourned, and they have to straighten it
Yeah.
out and bring it up, otherwise, you know, I would say no.
All right, and our final, so that one's adjourned till next month. We had told them that actually in the hearing. Is Victoria Home, which is, they already had all these variances. They're going to shrink down the number of variances because they're shrinking down the building. So all they have to do is come back to us with a clean sheet because they
So
took,
you know what they are.
so they took the planning board suggestions which is excellent on their part. And that gentleman did ask, oh my, is the house coming out? You know, is the
I only
Victoria
wish
Home?
everybody did it like they do it.
Yeah.
They're
The
trying to
Victoria
do
Home
everything
thing?
properly.
So that ends our meeting for
Today.
October 10th. So do I have a motion to adjourn out of our meeting tonight?
Motion to adjourn?
I'm sorry, oh, we gotta do our minutes. Stop the world. Okay, so do I have a motion to accept the minutes and the resolutions from the September 12th meeting, 2017?
Motion to accept?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You can't vote.
Yeah. And now, do I have now, we're gonna let myself do this one, and now do I have a motion to close the meeting?
Move to close the meeting.
Good.
Do I have a second?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Our next meeting is November 14th, 2017. Don't tell me you're going to Florida. Thank you. Have a good night. Have a good